On a tragic September day in 2015, the serene beauty of Utah's Zion National Park was shattered when a deadly flash flood swept through Keyhole Canyon, claiming the lives of 7 hikers. These victims, 6 of whom hailed from California, were part of a close-knit hiking group called the Valencia Hiking Crew. Seasoned outdoor enthusiasts, they had no idea their carefully planned adventure would turn into a heartbreaking disaster. The group, composed of men and women in their 50s, had spent months preparing for this expedition. On the morning of their ill-fated trip, 6 members attended a canyoneering class offered by a local outfitter, Zion Adventure Company. Promising to transform novices into capable canyoneers within hours, the class left the group confident and ready. Clad in wetsuits to protect against the canyon's frigid waters and armed with helmets and gear, they eagerly began their descent into the winding sandstone labyrinth. However, Zion's stunning landscape masked a growing danger. The National Weather Service had issued a warning earlier that day, forecasting a 40% chance of rain and a moderate risk of flash flooding, the second highest level of alert. By the time the group obtained their $15 permit to enter Keyhole Canyon, conditions had worsened. The chance of rain had risen to 50%, and rangers posted warnings at the visitor center, emphasizing the probability of floods in the park's slot canyons. Unaware of the looming threat, the hikers pressed on, marveling at the canyon's towering walls and narrow passages. Just hours later, dark clouds began to gather over Zion. At 2:30 p.m., a band of rain swept through the area, followed by a second, more intense storm. The National Weather Service issued an urgent flash flood warning, imploring anyone in the canyons to move to higher ground immediately. Keyhole Canyon, with its narrow corridors and steep descents, offers little room for error when conditions take a turn for the worse. Early sections of the route can sometimes be escaped by scrambling up the rock walls, but once hikers descend deeper, the canyon becomes inescapable. After rappelling into its depths, the only way out is to continue until the exit near Highway 9. As the storm unleashed its fury, the hikers became trapped. Another group of climbers, who had started their descent later and passed the Californians in the canyon, alerted park rangers when the rain began, fearing the slower group might be in danger. Their fears proved tragically accurate. By the time rescue efforts began, the floodwaters had already exacted their toll. The first body, that of Steve Arthur, was found the following day, swept downstream by the powerful currents. Over the next 2 days, search teams discovered the remains of the remaining hikers, scattered at various points along the flood's path. Linda Arthur, Steve's wife, was the last to be found. Her body recovered near the canyon's exit. This calamity was not confined to Keyhole Canyon. In Hilldale, a small community 20 miles south of Zion, the same storm triggered a flash flood that killed 12 members of a Mormon fundamentalist group, including 9 children. It was one of the deadliest weather events in Utah's history, underscoring the unpredictable and unforgiving power of nature. The hikers who perished in Keyhole Canyon were described by their families as experienced, cautious adventurers. They were parents, grandparents, and beloved members of their community, not reckless thrill-seekers. Their tragic end serves as a poignant reminder of the inherent risks of exploring wild spaces, especially in unpredictable conditions. Keyhole Canyon's haunting beauty and narrow passages remain a testament to nature's artistry and raw power. For those who venture into its depths, the lessons of that fateful day in 2015 serve as an enduring warning. Respect the wilderness, heed its warnings, and always prepare for the unexpected. What was meant to be an ambitious and exhilarating challenge turned into a harrowing tale of survival and ultimately a tragic end on the slopes of Mount Whitney, the tallest peak in the contiguous United States. Taylor Rodriguez, a 29-year-old from San Antonio, had set his sights on the summit of this towering 14,505-foot mountain. Little did he know that his journey would soon spiral into the kind of nightmare that strikes fear into the heart of even the most experienced hikers. It was December 30th, 2024, when Rodriguez began his ascent full of anticipation and excitement, but entirely unaware of the battle he was about to face. As the days passed, his family and friends heard nothing, and by January 2, 2025, the alarms were raised. Rodriguez was officially reported missing after he failed to check in and didn't return as planned. His whereabouts were unknown. The mountain was holding him captive. Inyo County Search and Rescue sprang into action, joined by the dedicated team of the Inyo County Sheriff's Office. The Whitney Trail and Mountaineers Route, popular paths to the summit, were scoured, with the hope that someone might have seen the young hiker, or perhaps had some clue about his last known movements. The search was urgent, but in a vast wilderness like Mount Whitney, the mountain had its own plans. The hours ticked by with no sign of Rodriguez. As the days blurred into each other, the search grew more desperate, with officials turning to social media, hoping fellow climbers who had braved the treacherous trails between December 30 and January 2 might hold the key to finding Rodriguez. But the mountain seemed to keep its silence, unwilling to give up its secrets. Then, on January 4th, the unthinkable was confirmed. Rodriguez's body was discovered at an elevation of 12,000 feet near the North Fork of Lone Pine Creek Trail. The rescue teams, exhausted and battered by the elements, had found what they feared most. The reality set in the mountain had claimed its prize, and this brave adventurer's journey had ended in the harshest of ways. We extend our deepest condolences to Taylor's family and friends during this difficult time. Inyo County Search and Rescue shared in a heartbreaking post. Rodriguez had initially set out from San Antonio on December 28th, driven by the dream of summiting Mount Whitney, but his fate took an unexpected turn when he changed his plans and opted to attempt the peak on his own. The details of his final days are still unknown. What happened between his departure and the fateful discovery remains a haunting mystery, the mountain's cruel nature obscuring the answers in the wind, snow, and brutal elements. For those who venture into the unforgiving wilderness, Mount Whitney is a reminder of the delicate balance between human ambition and nature's raw power. Rodriguez's tragic end underscores the unpredictability of even the most well-planned expeditions, and the devastating reality that sometimes the mountains don't give up their secrets without a heavy price. As the search and rescue teams pack up, the mountain holds its silence, leaving us with only questions. How close did Rodriguez come to the summit? What happened in those final days on the mountain? For his loved ones, the answers may never come, but the memory of his journey will live on, a sobering reminder of the dangers and beauty that lie in the world's highest places. On a frigid November night in 1983, off the coast of Norway, an ordinary shift for a group of deep-sea saturation divers turned into an unimaginable nightmare. The Byford Dolphin, a semi-submersible oil rig operating in the Norwegian sector of the North Sea, became the site of one of the most horrifying decompression accidents in history. What should have been a routine operation ended in devastation, leaving 4 divers and a support crew member dead in a manner so gruesome that even seasoned investigators were left shaken. Saturation diving is an essential but dangerous profession. Working at extreme depths for extended periods requires divers to acclimate to high-pressure environments. To minimize the risk of decompression sickness, also known as the bends, divers live for weeks in pressurized chambers, breathing a carefully controlled mixture of helium and oxygen. This setup allows them to work efficiently without the need for prolonged decompression after each dive. Instead of ascending slowly after each shift, they remain under constant pressure until their assignment is complete, at which point they undergo a carefully monitored, gradual decompression process. On the night of November 5th, a team of divers had just completed their shift and were returning from the depths in a diving bell, a small pressurized chamber designed to transfer them safely between the underwater worksite and the main saturation chambers on the rig. Standard procedure dictated that once the diving bell was attached to the trunk leading to the saturation chambers, the divers inside would secure the hatch, isolating the bell. Only then would the trunk be slowly depressurized before detaching the bell from the system. But something went terribly wrong, whether due to a moment of fatigue, a lapse in communication, or equipment failure. One of the tenders outside the chamber released the clamp, securing the diving bell too soon, before the trunk had been depressurized. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The system, which had been pressurized to 9 atmospheres, roughly 90 meters, 300 feet below sea level, was suddenly exposed to the normal atmospheric pressure of the rig above. The result was an explosive decompression event so violent that it instantly killed the diver who had released the clamp, launching the diving bell away from the rig with tremendous force. Inside the chambers, the 4 divers never had a chance. The rapid decompression caused the gases dissolved in their blood to expand with horrifying speed, leading to massive internal hemorrhaging. In an instant, their tissues ruptured, their blood foamed, and fat cells liquefied. Death came swiftly, but in a manner so gruesome it defied comprehension. One of the divers, closest to the opening where the decompression occurred, suffered a fate even more horrific. The pressure differential sucked his entire body through an opening only 60 centimeters, 24 inches wide. What was left of him was found in multiple locations across the rig, collected in separate bags, his remains scattered by the sheer force of the explosion. A piece of his body was discovered 10 meters, 33 feet away. The autopsy report, later released in chilling detail, painted a grim picture. The top of the victim's skull and brain were missing. His facial skin was completely separated from the bones, and most of his internal organs had been forcibly ejected from his body. His spine and ribs had been shattered beyond recognition. Even his liver, remarkably intact, was found lying on the rig's deck as though it had been surgically removed. The sheer brutality of the accident was enough to shake the diving community to the core. The families of the deceased spent over 2 decades fighting for justice, demanding an investigation into the failures that led to such a horrifying disaster. After 26 years, an official report concluded that serious flaws in the Byford Dolphin's equipment and procedures were to blame, finally bringing some measure of accountability. Though safety protocols were improved in the years following the tragedy, the events of that night remain a haunting proof of the deadly risks faced by deep-sea divers. For those who step into the abyss, the ocean is an unforgiving mistress. One mistake, one oversight, can unleash consequences too horrific to imagine. Angel's Landing in Utah's Zion National Park is renowned for its breathtaking views, but it also holds a reputation as one of the most perilous hiking trails in the United States. The route challenges hikers with narrow pathways, sheer drop-offs, and steep inclines, demanding caution and physical readiness. Chains, bolted into the rock, provide support along the most treacherous sections, but even these safeguards cannot eliminate the risks entirely. Despite its dangers, Angel's Landing remains a popular destination for thrill seekers and nature enthusiasts alike. However, the trail's hazards have led to multiple fatalities over the years, serving as stark reminders of the need for preparation and respect for the wilderness. One such tragedy occurred in 2017, when 45-year-old Tate Volino lost his footing on the steep, narrow trail and fell 1,000 feet to his death. This devastating accident underscored the critical importance of understanding personal limits, adhering to safety recommendations, and approaching challenging hikes with respect for the inherent risks. Officials have repeatedly urged visitors to exercise caution and to avoid the trail altogether if they lack sufficient experience or physical fitness. Angel's Landing has also been the site of medical emergencies unrelated to falls, further emphasizing the trail's grueling nature. In one such incident, a 63-year-old man from San Diego collapsed near Scout Lookout, a point almost 2 miles up the steep West Rim Trail and just before the chain-assisted section leading to Angel's Landing. When park rangers arrived, they found fellow hikers with medical training performing CPR on the man. Despite their efforts and nearly 90 minutes of CPR administered by both the hikers and emergency responders, he was pronounced dead at the scene. Rangers utilized an automated external defibrillator and a heart monitor during their attempts to revive him, but the life-saving measures proved unsuccessful. Preliminary findings suggested a heart attack as the cause of death, though an investigation was still pending. The incident mobilized over 20 search and rescue team members, including paramedics, emergency medical technicians, and a park ambulance. The swift response highlighted the challenges of addressing medical emergencies in remote and difficult-to-access areas, particularly on strenuous trails like Angel's Landing. These tragedies highlight the critical importance of preparation, self-awareness, and respect for one's physical limits when venturing into challenging outdoor environments. Zion National Park officials continuously remind visitors that hikes like Angel's Landing are not suitable for everyone. The combination of physical exertion, exposure to high altitudes, and the mental focus required to navigate narrow ledges makes this trail one of the most demanding in the park. Angel's Landing attracts adventurers seeking an adrenaline rush, but it also calls for an elevated level of responsibility. Knowing when to turn back, recognizing signs of physical distress, and adhering to park guidelines are crucial steps in ensuring safety on this iconic but unforgiving trail. While the allure of Angel's Landing lies in its extraordinary beauty, it is a place that demands preparation, vigilance, and utmost respect for nature's power. On Sunday, February 2, 2025, a breathtaking hike turned into a nightmare that no one could have predicted. The serene beauty of the Punch Bowls area near Santa Paula, a place that should have been filled with awe and adventure, became the backdrop for a tragic, heart-wrenching tale. A man in his mid-40s, later identified as John Antonio Madrigal, 44, from Oxnard, lost his life after an unforgiving fall into the icy, rushing waters. What was supposed to be a simple hike with a close friend ended in desperate attempts to save a life and ultimately crushing defeat. It was around noon when the Ventura County Sheriff's Office received the disturbing report. A hiker had plunged into the water and was unable to recover. In the early moments, no one knew exactly what had transpired, but as rescue teams rushed to the scene, the truth began to unfold. Madrigal had been hiking with a close friend, the kind of bond that made the wilderness seem smaller, more manageable. But as the two hiked through the rugged terrain, tragedy struck without warning. The water of Punch Bowls, beautiful yet deceiving, took hold of him in a flash. Madrigal's friend, a devastated witness to the horror, did everything he could to save him. In a split second, his best friend was gone, pulled into the frigid depths. Desperation flooded his every thought. Without hesitation, he threw himself into the water, twice, hoping to reach Madrigal before it was too late. The coldness of the water, the strength of the current, nothing could overcome the overwhelming power of nature that trapped his friend. Each second felt like an eternity, but despite his frantic attempts, Madrigal couldn't be reached. With no choice left, the friend did the unthinkable. He ran for miles trying to find a signal, hoping against hope that he could reach someone, anyone who might be able to help. His heart pounded in his chest, his breath shallow as panic overtook him. He had to do something. He had to reach 9/11. The mountain, the water, the vastness of it all was suddenly suffocating. After what must have felt like an eternity, he managed to text for help, but by the time the rescue teams arrived, it was already too late. Later, when the Ventura County Medical Examiner's Office confirmed the devastating news, it was revealed that Madrigal had drowned the water, claiming him in the worst possible way. But there was more to the tragedy. Atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease was found to have played a part, complicating the already dire situation. What should have been a routine outing had turned into a frantic, impossible struggle for survival. A life lost to a mix of the harsh elements and an unforgiving body. As the days went by, the details began to emerge. Preliminary reports from the sheriff's office initially suggested that Madrigal had fallen into the water, but the friend, speaking out for the first time, shed a different light on what happened. According to him, Madrigal had dove in intentionally, perhaps unaware of the dangers the water held. What went through Madrigal's mind in those last moments? Did he misjudge the situation? Did he think he could handle the water, only to be overwhelmed in the blink of an eye? We may never know. But what was clear is the agony that followed the helplessness of a friend who tried everything he could to save someone he loved. The pain of watching someone so close slip away, knowing you did your best, but it wasn't enough. The mountain, with its beauty, had claimed another victim, and there was nothing anyone could do to change it. As the investigation continues, the death has been ruled an accident. Yet, for those who knew Madrigal, the questions linger. How close was he to safety? Was there anything anyone could have done to stop this? The Punch Bowls, a place that attracts so many with its beauty, has now become a solemn reminder of how quickly things can go wrong and how fragile life truly is. The wilderness can be both breathtaking and brutal, and in this tragic event it claimed a man, a friend, and a memory that will never fade. Mount Everest, the ultimate test of human endurance, has claimed many lives, but few stories are as haunting as that of Hannelore Schmatz. A passionate and skilled mountaineer, she made history as the fourth woman to reach the summit of Everest, but she also became the first woman and the first German citizen to die on its unforgiving slopes. Born in Germany in 1940, Hannelore grew up with an adventurous spirit. She shared her love for the mountains with her husband, Gerhard Schmatz, an experienced climber. Together, they embarked on daring expeditions around the world, conquering peaks in the Alps, the Andes, and the Himalayas. But Everest remained the ultimate prize, a goal that, in 1979, they set out to achieve. At 29,032 feet, 8,849 meters, Everest is a formidable challenge for even the most experienced climbers. The journey to the summit requires navigating the infamous death zone, an altitude above 26,000 feet, 8,000 meters, where oxygen levels are dangerously low and the human body begins to shut down. With a fatality rate of around 6.5%, the mountain is ruthless to those who underestimate its dangers. In the fall of 1979, Hannelore and Gerhard joined an expedition team of 13 members, 8 climbers and 5 Sherpas. Among them were Swiss-American Ray Genet, New Zealander Nick Banks, and Germans Tilman Fischbach and Hermann Worth. The group faced extreme weather conditions, including a prolonged blizzard, but they remained determined to push forward. The expedition split into 2 teams at Camp 3. On October 1st, Gerhard led the first group to the summit, making history as the oldest person to reach the top at age 50. His team successfully descended to Camp 2 the next day. Meanwhile, Hannelore's group set off at dawn on October 2nd, despite worsening weather. Gerhard, speaking via walkie-talkie, warned her to reconsider, but she pressed on. By early afternoon, she and her teammates reached the peak. It was a moment of triumph, but also the beginning of a catastrophe. The descent turned deadly. Exhaustion and brutal conditions drained Hannelore's strength. Janet ran out of oxygen, and as darkness fell, both climbers were too weak to continue. Against the warnings of their Sherpa guides, they made the fateful decision to bivouac at 28,000 feet, 8,500 meters. It was a lethal mistake. As temperatures plummeted and winds howled, the freezing night took its toll. By morning, Genet had succumbed to hypothermia. Sungdair Sherpa, who had stayed behind with them, tried to help Hannelore down, but she was barely conscious, just 330 feet, 100 meters above Camp 4. She collapsed. Her last words were a desperate whisper, "Water, water," before she succumbed to the mountain's grip. She was only 39. Sungdair, frostbitten and barely alive, managed to reach a rescue team. He survived but lost most of his fingers and toes. For years, Hannelore's body remained a chilling landmark on Everest's southern route. Frozen in a seated position against her backpack, her eyes wide open, her hair whipped by the wind, she became a spectral presence on the mountain. Climbers described her as a sinister guard, a stark reminder of Everest's unforgiving nature. While Janet's body was eventually buried by snowfall, Hannelore's remained visible until 1984, when the mountain finally claimed her. Strong winds swept her remains over the Kangshung face, and she was lost from sight forever. Even today, over 200 bodies remain on Everest, silent witnesses to the mountain's relentless power. Gerhard, who survived the expedition, later reflected on his wife's fate. The team came home, but I alone, without my beloved Hannelore. Her legacy endures, a testament to both the triumphs and the tragedies that come with chasing the heights of the world's deadliest peak. On a fateful Saturday evening in August, the unforgiving wilderness of Alaska's Denali National Park became the site of a devastating tragedy. A sightseeing plane carrying 4 Polish tourists and their pilot crashed into the rugged terrain of Thunder Mountain, leaving all 5 aboard presumed dead. The ill-fated flight, operated by K2 Aviation, was a 1-hour tour over the breathtaking Kahiltna Glacier, a key starting point for climbers aiming to ascend Denali, the tallest peak in North America. The de Havilland Beaver plane, piloted by Craig Layson of Saline, Michigan, took off around 5 p.m., but never completed its journey. At approximately 6 p.m., the aircraft went down near the summit of Thunder Mountain, an imposing ridge rising 10,900 feet above the glacier. In the moments after the crash, Layson managed to send a distress call via satellite phone, reporting injuries among his passengers. However, the connection dropped before he could relay further details, leaving rescuers scrambling to piece together the situation. The plane was equipped with survival gear, including sleeping bags, a stove, and food, sparking a glimmer of hope that survivors might endure until help arrived. Nature, however, conspired against the rescue efforts. Low clouds and relentless rain shrouded the crash site, making it nearly impossible for search crews to locate the wreckage. For over a day, dense weather conditions thwarted aerial reconnaissance, prolonging the agony of those waiting for news. Finally, on Monday, the skies cleared just enough for a helicopter to reach the crash site, perched precariously on the steep slopes of Thunder Mountain. A park ranger was lowered by short-haul line onto the wreckage, where he began the grim task of searching for survivors. Inside the plane, now partially buried under snow, he discovered the bodies of 4 individuals. The snow surrounding the wreckage was undisturbed, with no footprints or signs that anyone had exited the aircraft. The 5th individual, presumed to be the pilot, remains missing, though authorities believe he too perished in the crash. The stark terrain of Thunder Mountain posed immense challenges to both the flight and subsequent rescue operation. Though labeled a mountain, the area is better described as a treacherous mile-long ridge, a mix of vertical rock faces, ice, and deep snowfields. The National Park Service characterized the conditions as some of the harshest imaginable, underscoring the difficulty of surviving such a crash. This tragic event marks a defining chapter in the history of Denali National Park, a place renowned for its beauty but also its peril. The Polish tourists, who had embarked on their flight to marvel at the untouched majesty of the glacier, instead met their end in one of its most remote and inhospitable corners. For K2 Aviation, a company long trusted to provide safe access to Denali's wonders, the crash is a heartbreaking reminder of the risks inherent in flying over such challenging terrain. While the company has not experienced frequent accidents, this incident underscores the unpredictable and often merciless nature of Alaska's wilderness. The tragedy of Thunder Mountain will not soon be forgotten. It serves as a permanent reminder of the delicate balance between humanity's desire to explore and the relentless power of nature, a force that does not yield to even the most prepared adventurers. The memories of those lost will remain etched in the hearts of their loved ones, and all who know the call of the wild can come with an unfathomable cost. What started as an exhilarating New Year's Day adventure in the Italian Alps has spiraled into a chilling tragedy. Samuel Harris, 35, and Aziz Ziriat, 36, both experienced hikers from London, had set off into the Adamello Range with a plan to trek from mountain hut to mountain hut, immersing themselves in the breathtaking but unforgiving beauty of the Italian wilderness. It was a journey they had done before, a test of skill, endurance, and brotherhood. But this time, something went terribly wrong. Days passed without a word. Their families weren't immediately alarmed. After all, Harris and Ziriat lived for this kind of isolation. They were known for pushing their limits, venturing into remote landscapes where phone signals faded into silence. Their friends reassured themselves that the pair was simply off the grid, enjoying the vast solitude of the mountains. Their loved ones had trusted their expertise. They go a couple of times a year. It wasn't surprising that they had no signal they like going off the grid, recalled Joe Stone, a close friend of Ziriat. But then January 6th arrived the day they were supposed to fly home. They never boarded their flight, they never checked in, they never even made it back to civilization. And that was when concern turned into fear. The search began under impossible conditions. Thick fog rolled in like a curtain, blocking all visibility. Snow piled up in heavy sheets, concealing every trace of movement. Rescuers tried to send helicopters to scan the peaks and valleys, but the relentless weather forced them to retreat. The mountains, it seemed, were refusing to give up their secrets. Finally, after days of battling nature's fury, a breakthrough rescuers, guided by the hikers' last phone activity, reached an isolated section of the range, near the treacherous south face of Carre Alto. And that's where they found him. Samuel Harris lay buried under the snow, lifeless, at the foot of a sheer rockfall. His backpack and gear were strewn nearby, half consumed by ice and time. Had he fallen? Slipped on the unforgiving terrain? Had an avalanche swept him away? The answers lay somewhere in the frozen silence, but one thing was certain, he hadn't made it out. But where was Aziz Ziriat? The discovery of Harris's body only deepened the mystery. There was no sign of his friend, no immediate clues to his fate. Had he tried to find help? Was he still out there, trapped, waiting for rescue? Or had the mountains already claimed him too, hiding his body somewhere beneath the endless drifts of snow? Rescuers fought against time, pushing forward with everything they had, but the mountain had its own plans. Within hours of finding Harris, the weather turned. Once more thick fog descended. Visibility vanished, and the threat of avalanches became too great. The search had to be suspended. Now, as the storm rages on, the search for Ziriat remains frozen in uncertainty. His loved ones can do nothing but wait, caught between hope and heartbreak. Did he manage to find shelter, waiting for a rescue that may never come? Or has the Adamello Range taken him, keeping its final secret buried beneath ice and stone? The only way to find out is to go back up the mountain. And when the weather clears, that's exactly what they'll do, because one man is still missing, and time is running out. In the unforgiving heights of Mount Everest, where the air is thin and the cold is merciless, Francis Arsentiev's final moments unfolded in a way both haunting and unforgettable. Her story is one of unrelenting ambition, breathtaking bravery, and a tragic end that immortalized her as Everest's Sleeping Beauty. Born on January 18, 1958 in Honolulu, Hawaii, Francis DiStefano Arsentiev was destined for adventure. From an early age, she possessed a fierce determination, an insatiable thirst for challenge. Her ultimate goal, to stand atop the world's highest peak without supplemental oxygen. In 1998, she set out to make history as the first American woman to achieve this feat. But Everest is merciless. The climb demands everything from those who dare to challenge it. Oxygen levels plummet, temperatures drop to lethal lows, and even the strongest bodies begin to shut down. For Francis, the cost of her dream was steep. Despite overwhelming exhaustion, the brutal separation from her husband, and the sheer mental and physical toll of the climb, she pressed on. Against all odds, she reached the summit, but the true battle had only just begun. The descent, always more treacherous than the climb, became her undoing. Somewhere along the way, she became disoriented. Her body, battered by extreme cold and deprivation, began to fail her. Alone and vulnerable in Everest's infamous death zone, she slipped into the slow, agonizing grip of hypothermia. As her core temperature dropped, she lost cognitive function. The world around her faded into a blur. Two climbers, British mountaineer Ian Woodall and South African Cathy O'Dowd, encountered Francis on their way up. She was still alive, but barely. Her body frozen, her voice weak, helpless against the mountain's brutal conditions. They tried to aid her, but ultimately had to make the impossible decision: save themselves or perish alongside her. The guilt of leaving Frances behind would haunt them forever. For nearly a decade, her body remained on Everest, a silent, snow-covered figure resting against the icy slopes. When climbers passed by, they described her appearance as eerily serene, her face pale, her features untouched by the brutality of the mountain. She looked as though she were merely sleeping, earning her the heartbreaking moniker, the Sleeping Beauty of Everest. But her story did not end there. In 2007, haunted by the memory of the woman they could not save, Ian Woodall and a team returned to the mountain. This time, their mission was not to conquer Everest, but to bring peace to those it had claimed. The operation, known as the Tao of Everest, sought to retrieve Frances' body and give her the dignity in death she had been denied. It was a symbolic act of justice, not just for her, but for others whose remains had become grim landmarks on the mountain. Among them, the infamous Green Boots and David Sharp. Frances' body was finally moved from its exposed position, allowing her to rest beyond the reach of passing climbers. The mission was hailed as a heroic gesture, an effort to honor those who had given everything to Everest. Her story remains one of both triumph and tragedy. She reached the top of the world, but the mountain refused to let her go. Her legacy, however, endures, not just as a cautionary tale of Everest's dangers, but as a testament to the human spirit's relentless pursuit of greatness. The Sleeping Beauty of Everest will never be forgotten. Zion National Park is a place of beauty and danger, where breathtaking views mask the unforgiving terrain beneath. Hikers travel from all over the world to explore its towering cliffs and winding trails, seeking adventure and awe-inspiring sights. But for one man, what should have been an ordinary trek turned into a fatal mystery, one that has left visitors and authorities searching for answers. On the morning of Sunday, February 2nd, 2025, a chilling call came in. A hiker had been found motionless on the Canyon Overlook Trail, one of Zion's most well-traveled paths. Park officials were alerted at 7:15 a.m., and emergency responders rushed to the scene. Every second counted. Was he injured? Was he still alive? But as they arrived, hope quickly faded. The 37-year-old man was already gone. The Canyon Overlook Trail isn't the most treacherous path in Zion, but it demands respect. It stretches just 1 mile, a hike that usually takes about an hour. But don't let the distance fool you. Steep drop-offs, shifting terrain, and sudden elevation changes make this a trail where one wrong step can mean disaster. Yet, something about this case is unsettling. How did an experienced adult hiker meet such an abrupt and tragic fate on a trail considered moderate? If it had been a sheer cliff face like Angel's Landing, perhaps the cause would be obvious. But here, the circumstances remain clouded in uncertainty. Was it a simple misstep in the early morning hours, a sudden medical emergency, or did something else happen? Something more sinister lurking in the shadows of Zion. As the Washington County Sheriff's Office launches an investigation, the questions are piling up. Was he hiking alone? Were there any witnesses? Did he suffer a fatal fall? Or did his body simply give out under the strain of the climb? Authorities remain tight-lipped, fueling speculation and concern. Those who have walked the Canyon Overlook Trail before can't help but feel a chill at the thought. How could someone set out for a simple hike and never return? One moment, he was climbing the rocky path, taking in the beauty of Zion. The next, his life was over, leaving only a lifeless body on the trail as the park's towering cliffs stood silent. This wasn't supposed to happen, but in nature's raw and unpredictable embrace, even the most familiar trails can turn deadly. And until the truth is uncovered, one question will haunt every hiker who sets foot on that trail. Could this happen to me? The iconic Half Dome in Yosemite National Park has been a symbol of adventure and natural grandeur since the mid-1800s, when American settlers first began exploring the region. Towering 4,800 feet above Yosemite Valley, this crescent-shaped granite formation captivates visitors with its striking beauty and promises of awe-inspiring panoramic views. For many outdoor enthusiasts, reaching the summit is a bucket list achievement. representing both a physical challenge and a deep connection to nature. However, the allure of Half Dome is accompanied by significant dangers, making it one of the most challenging and hazardous hikes in the park. In September 2019, a tragic incident underscored the risks inherent in the climb. Danielle Burnett, a 29-year-old woman from Lake Havasu City, Arizona, lost her life while attempting to reach the summit. She fell 500 feet from the section of the trail where climbers must use cables to steady themselves against the steep exposed granite. According to Yosemite spokesperson Scott Gedeman, Burnett lost her footing on this precarious stretch, leading to her fatal fall. Emergency responders located her body shortly after the incident, but the tragedy left an indelible mark on the hiking community and prompted park officials to investigate the circumstances surrounding her death. The Half Dome hike is widely regarded as one of Yosemite's most iconic yet physically demanding trails. Covering a grueling 17 miles round trip, it requires hikers to ascend 4,800 feet in elevation. The journey culminates in a steep, nerve-wracking climb, aided by cables bolted into the granite to assist hikers in navigating the final stretch to the summit. This last portion of the trail, while offering unmatched views, is notoriously challenging, requiring both physical endurance and mental resilience. Yosemite National Park itself describes the Half Dome route as a premier attraction, but frequently emphasizes its difficulty and the preparation necessary for a successful ascent. To manage the risks and the immense popularity of the trail, permits for the Half Dome hike are distributed through a lottery system. This approach helps limit the number of hikers on the trail each day, reducing congestion and minimizing the potential for accidents. Despite these measures, incidents still occur, often as a result of unpreparedness, overconfidence, or underestimating the trail's demands. Common issues include dehydration, fatigue, and misjudging weather conditions, all of which can quickly turn a challenging hike into a dangerous situation. The cables on Half Dome are both a lifesaver and a source of danger. Installed to provide support for climbers ascending the steep granite face, they allow hikers to pull themselves upward while maintaining balance. However, their effectiveness depends on the conditions and the hiker's experience. Rain or other weather changes can render the granite slippery and the cables difficult to grip, significantly increasing the likelihood of slips and falls. While the park recommends using a safety harness to secure oneself to the cables, this precaution is not mandatory, leaving many climbers vulnerable. Danielle Burnett's death highlighted these vulnerabilities, serving as a reminder of the risks associated with such an ambitious outdoor adventure. Burnett, like many others, was drawn to the allure of Yosemite's beauty and the personal triumph of conquering Half Dome. Her loss underscores the importance of proper preparation, situational awareness, and respect for the unpredictable nature of the wilderness. The challenges posed by Half Dome are not limited to its physical demands. Hikers must contend with environmental factors such as altitude, weather, and trail conditions. Sudden rainstorms can transform the trail into a hazardous path, while intense sunlight and heat can cause dehydration or heat exhaustion. Even experienced hikers have found themselves overwhelmed by the combination of these elements. The trail's warnings about its difficulty are not mere formalities. They are essential guidelines meant to protect lives. Despite its dangers, Half Dome continues to captivate outdoor enthusiasts from around the globe. Its towering presence and the sense of accomplishment it offers to those who reach its summit make it a compelling destination. However, this attraction must be tempered by an understanding of the challenges and a commitment to safety. For many, the climb is a transformative experience, blending the thrill of adventure with the awe of nature's raw power. For others, like Danielle Burnett, it has been tragically unforgiving. Danielle Burnett's story is a clear example of how quickly an outdoor excursion can turn tragic. Her love for the outdoors and her adventurous spirit resonate with many who share her passion. While her loss is deeply felt, it also serves as a call to action for others to prioritize safety and preparedness in their own pursuits. Half Dome's allure will undoubtedly continue to draw visitors for generations to come, but its challenges must never be underestimated. It is a place of extraordinary beauty and extraordinary risk, a combination that demands the utmost respect from all who dare to climb it. On a warm summer night in 1974, Disneyland, the so-called happiest place on Earth, became the site of an unthinkable tragedy. An 18-year-old employee named Deborah Gale Stone was killed in a horrifying accident at the America Sings attraction, a newly opened musical show celebrating American history. What should have been just another night of joyful performances ended in disaster, forever altering the way amusement park safety was handled. The evening of July 8th had begun like any other for Deborah. A recent high school graduate from Santa Ana, California, she had taken a summer job at Disneyland, thrilled to be working in a place filled with magic and wonder. Her role as a hostess for America Sings was simple but essential, greeting guests as they settled into the rotating theater. America Sings had only been open for a little over a week, having debuted on June 29th as a replacement for the Carousel of Progress. The attraction featured an outer ring of 6 seating areas that rotated around a stationary core, moving audiences from scene to scene as animatronic figures performed patriotic songs. The concept was innovative, but hidden within its moving parts was a lethal design flaw. That night, Deborah took her position beside the stage, microphone in hand, welcoming guests as the theater rotated into place. Then, something went terribly wrong. At approximately 11 p.m., as the audience from one cycle exited and the theater reset for the next group, Deborah somehow found herself caught in the narrow space between the rotating wall and the stationary stage. A chilling scream cut through the music and chatter of the park. In the adjacent theater, a man named Daniel Robeson, a 33-year-old Air Force serviceman visiting with his family, witnessed a horrifying sight. From his seat in the front row, he caught a glimpse of what he initially thought was a child being pulled into the gap between the walls. In a moment of confusion and terror, he realized the truth. It was Deborah. The rotation of the theater stopped, but it was too late. Deborah had been crushed between the walls, trapped in a deadly space no one had foreseen as a potential hazard. The accident sent shockwaves through Disneyland. The Los Angeles Times reported on July 10th that Deborah died at 11 p.m. during a 45-second interval when the audience had left her theater and it was moving into position to start a new cycle. It was the first employee fatality in Disneyland's 19-year history. Though there had been previous guest deaths at the park, this was the first time an attraction had taken the life of a cast member. America Sings was shut down immediately following the tragedy, remaining closed for 2 days while engineers worked frantically to improve its safety features. A warning light was installed to alert operators if anyone stepped too close to the dangerous gap. Later, additional barriers were put in place to prevent another catastrophe. For many, the accident exposed a sobering truth. Even in a place built for joy and wonder, hidden dangers could lurk behind the scenes. Deborah's death served as a reminder that innovation and spectacle must always be balanced with caution and safety. Though America Sings continued to operate until 1988 before being replaced by Star Tours, the memory of that fateful night never truly faded. For those who remember, Deborah Gale Stone's story remains a haunting chapter in Disneyland's history. A young woman full of promise, lost to a tragedy that could have been prevented. For over 2 decades, Ann Houghton was a guardian of the Great Smoky Mountains, a passionate hiker, a tireless volunteer, and a woman whose love for the wilderness ran deep. She knew these trails better than most, having spent more than 4,000 hours navigating them, educating visitors, and preserving the land she held dear. But on a routine overnight hike, something went terribly wrong. Ann set out on Tuesday, 28th January, just as she had countless times before. There was no reason to suspect danger, no warnings, no bad weather, no sign that this hike would be different. But when she didn't return the next day, unease crept in. At first, many believed she was simply delayed, maybe enjoying an extra moment in the place she loved most. But as the days stretched on with no word, that hope turned into something darker. By Saturday, when she failed to show up for her volunteer shift, alarm bells rang, A full-scale search began, with multiple agencies racing against time to find her. Her vehicle was discovered at Smokemont Campground, a haunting reminder that she had ventured into the wilderness but never made it back. The search pushed deeper, covering miles of rugged terrain, Bradley Fork, Chastine Creek, Hughes Ridge, until finally, nearly a week after she vanished, the heartbreaking truth was uncovered. At 1:53 p.m. on Sunday, February 2nd, Anne's body was found just a quarter mile from the Enlow Creek Trail, so close to the path, so agonizingly near to safety, yet something had stopped her from making it back. Authorities have yet to determine her cause of death, but they have ruled out foul play. Still, the mystery lingers. What happened to a woman so experienced, so deeply connected to these mountains that even the most challenging trails had never fazed her before? Her loss sent shockwaves through the community. Anne was an enduring and beloved member of our Smokies community, said Charles Sellers, acting superintendent of Great Smoky Mountains National Park. She was a dedicated volunteer and avid hiker who shared her passion for the park with many visitors. Great Smoky Mountains National Park offers condolences to her family and friends. The search effort had been massive, with the teams from Cherokee Fire and Rescue, Bucer, the Macon Volunteer Fire Department, the Cowie Volunteer Fire Department, the Appalachian Mountain Rescue Team, and the Jackson County Sheriff's Office working tirelessly to find her. But in the end, the Smokies took back one of their own. Anne's dedication was unmatched since 2004. She had taken few, if any, breaks in service, the Park Service said. In 2022, her tireless efforts earned her a nomination for the prestigious George and Helen Hartzog Award for Outstanding Volunteer Service. Her tragic death raises more questions than answers. Was it a sudden medical emergency, a misstep on the trail, or something more sinister lurking in the wilderness? Whatever happened in those final moments, one thing is certain: Anne Houghton's legacy will forever be etched into the very mountains she gave her life to. On a stark October evening in Sweden's Lapland region, the call of adventure ended in tragedy for 22-year-old YouTuber Storm Debul, who was found dead following a brutal snowstorm. Known online as Storm Outdoorsy, Debul had garnered a small but loyal following by documenting his solo hiking and camping expeditions across northern Europe. His haunting final messages to friends and family now serve as a chilling testament to the dangers of his chosen passion. Debul had been hiking alone when the severe storm descended, trapping him in its icy grip. In a video sent to a friend as the tempest raged, he narrated the conditions with an unnerving mix of calm and unease. The wind howled against his tent, and snow had already crept into his boots. "Tonight it's going to get worse. Jesus Christ," he said, his voice carrying a grim acknowledgement of what lay ahead. As the storm intensified, Debul reached out to emergency services, reporting injuries and pleading for help. However, the ferocity of the weather delayed rescuers until the following day. By then, it was too late. On October 30th, search teams found his lifeless body, exposed to the elements with no shelter in sight. A broken nose hinted at the ordeal he endured, but the full story of his final hours remained shrouded in the snowy wilderness. For his family, the loss is a wound deepened by the vivid imagination of his suffering. He must have suffered for a long time and died alone. I keep imagining his last moments. It devastates me, his mother, Elizabeth Raidmaker, said in an emotional statement. His father, Bout, echoed her grief, expressing a desperate hope to recover his son's camera, which might contain the last chapters of his life story. Debul's YouTube channel, which he had launched only 3 months earlier, showcased his love for nature and solitude. Despite having just over 1,100 subscribers, his videos resonated with viewers who admired his adventurous spirit. In his last message to his grandmother, Debul sought to reassure her, texting, "It's snowing heavily here, but don't worry, I'll survive, you know." The words now carry a tragic irony, showing the fine line between confidence and vulnerability in the wild. The snowstorm's severity not only claimed Debul's life, but also delayed his family's efforts to retrieve his belongings. His father remains determined to find his camera, believing it holds invaluable memories of his son's final journey. "His videos are a priceless legacy for us," Boat said. But now his camera is there, somewhere in the snow, full of images from his very last trek. "I would love nothing more than to get it back." Storm de Buell's story shows the unpredictable power of nature and the risks inherent in pushing personal boundaries. While his death is a profound loss to his loved ones and the community he inspired, his legacy endures in the spirit of exploration and resilience that defined his short but impactful life. His final trek, though marked by tragedy, serves as both a cautionary tale and a tribute to the indomitable human desire to connect with the natural world. On a crisp, cold morning in October 2022, in the shadow of the towering Garhwal Himalayas, a group of climbers set out with the hope of summiting Draupadi Ka Danda 2, DKD2, a daunting peak rising to 18,600 feet. But for some, that ambition would be their last, as an avalanche of unimaginable force swept through them, leaving devastation in its wake. Ankush Sharma, only 23 years old, was one of the climbers that morning. As part of an advanced mountaineering course with the Nehru Institute of Mountaineering, EM, Sharma was prepared for the challenges that lay ahead, though no one could have predicted the deadly force that would strike. The group had set off early, just after 3:30 a.m. from Camp 1, nestled at 15,800 feet. As the climbers ascended into the early darkness, their headlamps flickered like fireflies against the snow. The air was thin, and the temperature was dropping, but they pressed on. Among the climbers was Sunil Lalwani, a 28-year-old former marketing professional who had left the bustle of city life for the silence of the mountains. For him, climbing DKD2 wasn't just a challenge, it was a chance to test his limits. Deep Thakkar, also 28, was determined to reach the summit of DKD2, his first 5,000-meter peak. A fund manager by trade, Thakkar had relocated to Himachal Pradesh to pursue his passion for mountaineering. The summit beckoned, promising to make their dreams a reality. The weather that day was deceptively calm. Snow fell lightly in the early hours, a slight breeze that the climbers barely noticed. By the time they reached Rambo Rock at 16,800 feet, the team had clipped into their first fixed rope, making their way up through a rocky section, carefully avoiding cracks in the glacier below. As dawn's first light began to creep over the horizon, a sense of cautious optimism filled the air. The group moved in tight formation, each climber following the other, ropes connecting them in a lifeline. Their progress was slow, but steady. The snow was deep, and the climb was grueling. But the summit came into view, a sight that filled Thakkar's heart with exhilaration. The final stretch lay ahead. At 8:30 a.m., Sharma reached the summit snowfield and unclipped himself from the fixed line. He was nearly there, just a few more steps. But then, without warning, disaster struck. A deep crack, almost imperceptible, ripped through the slope above them. It released a massive avalanche, cascading downward like a roaring beast. The avalanche moved with brutal force. What had been a hopeful ascent turned into a chaotic nightmare in an instant. Snow and ice tore down the mountainside, sweeping climbers off their feet. Thakkar, just below, could do nothing but watch in horror as his companions were taken by the slide. Lalwani, tangled in the snow, plunged his ice axe into the freezing slope, desperately trying to arrest the slide. But it was futile. The snow surged around him, and within moments he too was consumed by the wave of ice and snow. Sharma, nearing the summit, turned back in confusion. His world, once filled with hope, had gone eerily silent. The fixed ropes, their only connection to the others, were gone. His friends were gone. There was no sound, no cries for help, just the haunting silence of the mountain. What happened? Sharma would later reflect. Everything happened in the blink of an eye, and everything happened in silence. The avalanche, relentless and indiscriminate, tore through the climbers. The once calm and exhilarating climb turned into a desperate fight for survival. The mountain claimed more than just their dreams. It took lives, erasing them as if they had never been there at all. In the aftermath, rescue operations began, but the damage had already been done. The avalanche had stolen everything: lives, aspirations, and the hope of a successful summit all vanished in an instant. The tragedy was felt not only by the climbers' families and loved ones, but by the mountaineering community itself, shaken by the raw power of nature and the unforgiving realities of high-altitude climbing. DKD-2, though less notorious than its towering neighbors like Thalay Sagar and Meru, proved that no peak, no matter the height, was safe from the deadly forces of the Himalayas. This tragedy would serve as a stark reminder of nature's unpredictability, a warning that in the mountains, even the best laid plans can come undone in the blink of an eye.